we open lock as a sport, as probably as this is a lockpicking channel. I'm pretty sure people are accustomed with that. But we'll start with the basics. When we open a lock, we need to know what a lock. Picture one, this is a lock. For the Americans, this might look weird because, well, for them it's upside down. So we'll swap this to their world, and that's mainly because, well, all my slides are orientated that way, and I tend to impression that way as well, because it eats away a tiny bit of time of my openings. So that's always a good thing. If you look at this lock schematically, it looks a bit like this. So you have a round thing and a hole and a thing in there. If we take off another layer, it looks like this. And now we also see why the lock wouldn't open when we try to turn it, because there's a blue bit in the way. And what we need to do is push that blue bit out of the way, because, well, it's stuck now if we try to turn it. And if we lift it high enough, then that works. The tool to normally do that is called a key. And, well, normally there's not one pin stack, but there's 5. And if we insert a key, that goes like this. So all the pins are nowish at the correct shear line. This is, well, this is the shear line. So if all the pins are stacked to the correct height there, that happens. Even if even one is too high or too low, so that one is too low here. Now it's too high, it won't turn. So it needs to be on the same depth. The idea is, if you have 5 pin stacks and you start turning them, 5 of the blue bits are preventing the cylinder from turning. That's actually not true, because in the real world we use shite like this. If you look at, this is the top of the cylinder where the holes for the pin stacks are drilled. Those edges are supposed to be straight, so 90 degrees. These are supposed to be round, not that crappy as they are appearing here. But that enables us to do stuff. And by stuff I mean, if we now start turning, there's not 5 bits preventing it from turning, there's 1 bit preventing it from turning first. Because that pin is too thick, or the other ones are differently crooked, or the drill hole are misaligned. Actually, I don't care why, because that can vary. But one will be different than the other. So that means, well, one pin will preventing it from be turning first. So then we're getting back to this position again. There's 1 bit that's preventing the cylinder from turning. So if we lift that one up, that doesn't work, but you get the general idea. If we lift that one up, then your cylinder will turn ever so slightly. There we go. So it'll turn, and here you can see with some luck that pin will stay on that ledge. So that enables us to do the following. We have a pin stack, and so if we apply tension, 1 pin will be bind first, and if we go in with a pick, because, well, first we're picking now, so we're explaining how a lock works so we can figure out how to impression a key. And if we lift that one to the correct level, the next one I mean, that one doesn't want to go up because it's bind to the side, and now a different one will be not loose, and if we push that one up, then it'll work. So we keep on continuing that until everything is to the correct height, and then we have an open lock. Well, I presume we believe this, so let's continue. But the talk is called Impressioning Master Key System, so let's talk about impressioning and not picking. Yeah, let's skip this. What we do with impressioning is, we start off with a blank uncut key. So a cut as it hangs in the back of your key copying facility. So a completely uncut key. That means that if we now start to turn the lock, which is now easy because we have a nifty tool in there called the key, not blue bits are preventing the cylinder from turning, but red bits, because we lift every pin stack up to its maximum level. But all the other rules still apply. So if we start turning it, it's not 5 bits preventing it from turning, it's 1. Because the drill holes are misaligned, the pin is thicker, and again, I don't care. But now we can also turn the key the other way. Because normally if you're picking and you turn your cylinder the other way, all the pins will drop down. But they won't now because there's a key in the way. So useful. So if we turn one side, this pin is binding, and what we can do, we can jiggle the key a bit. There is some move in your key because it's not a complete snug fit, because otherwise stuff wouldn't work and would wear and tear quite easily. And so if we lift this key on pin number 1, 2, 3, and 5, the pin is the key is only lifting up those keys, and of course, well, pressing those springs. But pin stack number 4 doesn't want to go up because it gets squished to the side if you try to turn that cylinder. Which means that the force in this part, can you see my mouse? So here and there and there's hardly any force being generated to the key. Here, that force is considerably stronger than in the other positions. Okay, so if we now turn the other direction, with some luck, another position will prevent, on another position, a pin will not be wanted to go up. So if you then take out your key and examine it very thoroughly, you see a tiny dot there and a tiny dot there. And yes, they can be tiny. So there and there. They might look something like this, but I tell you, if it looks like this, you're quite lucky. And what we do on those positions that have the markings, we take a bit of material off. And to speed things up, we can take the exact amount of material off, and if you don't know how much that exactly is, then we take baby steps. But let's presume we know the correct depths, so we know how much material to take off to get to the next level. So what we then do, we reintroduce that same key to that same lock, and of course we turn it one way, nothing changed. So again, that pin stack will be binding if we turn it, so that will give an indentation there. If we turn the other side, that pin is still in play, so it will push there. If we take the key out, examine it, we will find indentations in the valleys we just created, there and there. That looks kind of like that. And what we do, we take even more material off of that position. Rinse and repeat, we keep on doing this, but that pin that was marking all the way, that's in the correct level now. So that pin stack is not preventing the cylinder from turning. So it should not mark anymore. And so if we go through the motions, so wiggle, wiggle, turn, turn, all the things, we come up with a key like that. So that one will mark, because nothing changed on that position. This is supposed to be empty, so according to that pin stack, this lock is open. And with some luck, on another position, a indentation, a mark appeared. So what we do then is take away more material on where the marks were. And then you keep on doing that, and with some luck you end up with a working key. It might look funny, because if you look at the top key, that's a key, that's well, what a normal key would look like, according to some people. This one looks like a shark took a bite out of it. But if you look at the important parts, being the bottom of the valleys, those are the same, because that is where your pin will rest. So that is the only part of the key that gets examined to figure out if that's the correct depth. And if you're any good with that, you win prizes. And my machine is slow. Okay, so that works on normal pin stacks. This is a Corbin, I think, I took apart. And as you saw, we start off with lifting everything above the shear line. So security pins, we don't care, because as soon as they come in play, then you know you've been too far. So actually it's a nice feature for an impressioner. Except, of course, when they throw evil stuff like this at you, which is a completely different ball game, but it still works. Just your feedback will be wildly different. This is an ABAS A something, and this is what we normally compete on in Europe. And yes, but it still works. It took some getting used to. Uh,
D83.
Thank you, Holly. This is a Dimple lock. The key is a Silka. I don't know if the lock is also a Silka. That also works. Just filing is a different beast, so you tend to file across the key instead of making a hole where the dents are, because that's hard to read. But this still works. Yeah.
What about, do you mind if I ask a quick question?
Nope, not a problem.
I was wondering about Dimple Locks, how impressioning would work, but specifically I was wondering about, like, with multi-lock, if that's something that you've ever heard of people doing.
If it's a pin-in-pin config, I'm pretty sure it should be doable, because we're still talking about pins. But making those, I wouldn't know how to file that. But
Yeah.
but yeah, if it's not a pin-in-pin, it's actually quite easy. As an example, I made a. It's not a very clear picture, but I made a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I keyed a cylinder to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 combination, and yeah, I impression it like that. So you see, at some point, you're eating away more to your key than there is key material, but the important parts still work, because the actual place where it gets, because this is the line where the pins are, and you can even see drag lines here where the pins got dragged across. So as long as you still have material there, even on your deepest point, you should be good. But of course, at some point, this key becomes very fragile. But then again, in a sports competition, open is open, and please don't touch it again, because stuff might break. Yes, so that's impressioning. That's how we do it. If there's any question about this, then yeah, please go ahead. But I wanted to talk about a special thing that I came up with, I guess that's 12 years ago now, and that's a master key system. I didn't invent a master key system, but I did invent a way to attack it. If you don't know what a master key system is, it's basically a set of keys and some keys can open some locks, and other keys can open other locks, and those Venn diagrams intersect at some point. So you have keys for some locks, then we have keys for more locks, and if done correctly, there's even a single key that can open all the locks. Well, as an attacker, as a red team or whatever, the most interesting key to have is, of course, the top one. But let's look at the system first. So how does it work? Instead of one shear line, these are only the key pins and not the housing pins, of course. Instead of one shear line per pin stack, well, this would be your shear line, this would be a shear line. This pin stack has two shear lines. So your shear line could be here, and it could be here. And of course, here, 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 and here. Which means that if we look at the first two pins, because on the left side would be the entrance point of your lock, these two pins, if we want to impression or pick them, that's easy. We just have to lift them to the correct level, to the top of the shear line. But if we look at the third pin stack, well, this would mean an open, but so would this. And if we look at the other pins as well, this would be an open, that would be an open, that would be an open, that would be an open. You kind of get the idea that if you start decoding whatever combination of keys that would open this lock, you end up with a shitload of keys. Which is less than useful, because then you have to do that with every door. And we want to have the top one. actually. There has been some research done about this. This is one of the most clear and important ones. What they used to do, what they envisioned was you take a key that is working and then you copy that key a number of times. But you don't make a complete copy. You only copy 4 positions out of the 5. And then you start basically taking steps down. So you try every position on you try every key depth on every possible position, but you try it with one position at a time, which works, but then you still end up with with that box of keys that all work, but you don't know which one is that one. Okay, so how do we attack this? Because we really want to figure out the top key on that one. Why is this in here? No idea. What we did for a convention in Melbourne was Holly, your guest this evening, because she is a lockpicker, but she's foremost a very competent locksmith. She rigged up 4 locks for me. Those were out of a system of, I believe, 20 locks in a masterkey system. And these were taken randomly out of that set of 20. I, at that point, have not touched that locks, those locks, and we tried to figure out how to actually open this and to figure out what the top, what the top key would be. This is the internal config of those 4 locks. So this is lock number. Where are we? Oh, nah. Lock number 1, 2, 3, and 4. And of course, because we start off, if we do impressioning, we start off with a blank key. So everything gets lifted up. So if we attack number 1. If we attack key number 1, this of course needs to be to the correct depth. This pin started off way up there, and if we take off material, the first shear line we reach on this one is this one and not that one. Same for this pin stack, same for that pin stack. So the key we end up with, the first key we end up with is this. And yes, this key opens that lock, but it doesn't have to be the master key. Because if we look at the pin stack again, we do not know that this is the correct shear line for the master. Or that one, or that one. We don't know. It could be any other combination. So the only way to test if that key is actually a master key is take this key and take it to a couple of locks. Well, we have 4, and so it opens number 1, because that's what the key is made for. 2 and 3 remain closed, and number 4 is open. So we do have some submaster. So what do? Well, we take that same key we just made, and we walk to door number 2, which doesn't open. And we keep on impressioning it on the same key. Then we end up with that key, which looks quite similar to the other one, because of course on position 1 and 2 there's no master discs, so those are correct. Those were correct, and those will be correct. And only on these 3 positions we have to figure out what is going to happen. So if it marks there, we file it there, and it doesn't have to mark on all the places, because some of those 3 pin stacks might maybe be at the master key level, so those won't mark again. We'll see what happens. So this is an open on door number 2, and this is the key that came out. And if we go back to door number 1, that remains closed all of a sudden. 2 and 3 now open, and 4 is closed. Okay. So so we have a working key for number 2, because that's where we impression it on. And now we either go to 1 or 4 to figure out what will happen. Let's go to number 1, and so we take the key that we now have that opens 2 and 3, and we try to open number 1, which doesn't work, so we impression a bit more. We take so you impression it, and I believe on position 3 there is a marking, so we take that off until it works. And then with some luck we have a working key on all 4 locks. And which means we kind of beat a master key system at that point. Any questions? I was a bit fast. Did we lose connection, or does nobody have questions?
No, that was very cool. I was thinking at first how it would work, but then at a certain point in the presentation, I was like, "Oh, you used the same key."
Yes, we use the same key. You take one key, you end up with one key, and that one key is the one key you want.
Right. That's so cool.
Of course, if you're smart about it, then you'll probably duplicate your key after every step. Because, well, if you overfile at some point, or if you tear your key or whatever, you have to start the whole process again. So being smart about it, I would burn through more keys. But you keep on continuing with the same combination you found out. So technically you keep on using the same key, yes.
That's so cool. I'm impressed. Sorry for the terrible
words. Yeah. These things happen. So yeah, I figured this out about 12 years ago, and I showed it to some guys. I was like, it sounds so simple. Why hasn't anybody thought about this? It's basically, it feels like a paperclip. You go like, well, why don't people know this? And I asked a few people who I respect and know a lot about locks, and they all were like, I've never seen this. And some of those guys turned it into a training workshop and sold that to some 3 or 4 letter agencies, and did that for a couple of years. And 2 or 3 years ago I decided to go public. So I did a talk at Alsecon, and there is this. So I now open up the floor for... Thank you. So I now open up the floor for chatting, questions, or whatever. Show and tell. God knows, whatever we fancy.
I've got one little question. I
Sure.
don't know too much about master key systems. Is the master key always going to be the lowest shear line?
Absolutely not. That will only... Well, in some master key systems, that will be the case. But as I told you, as I already stated, this one was pinned up by Ali, which is a competent locksmith. So no. But it does... if the master key would always be the lowest one, then we can just... if it would be the lowest one, then you can always take a working key and file that down to a master key. That would be a bad thing. So you want some of the pins to be higher. In a normal lock, you want some of the pins to be higher than your master and some to be lower. Because otherwise, if it's all higher, then the first key I make in this situation would be a master. And if it all would be lower, then, well, like I said, you can make a master from any working key in your system, which is a bad thing for key control. So some should be higher and some should be lower. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. Thank you.
Cool. Actually, a lot of locksmiths do not know this. Which I bought a couple of master key systems, and some are not fun to play with, because once you pop one lock, you have the master key, which is not the way it should be. But it does happen in the wild.
Yeah, I can see that being super useful in a locksmith application if you're ever called on a job that someone needs to figure out what the master key for their system is. And even if you can take apart all the locks, it would take almost longer to do that unless, like, if you're a good impressioner, you could probably find the master key faster that way.
If you need to take a number of locks apart, then yes, I agree with you.
So that's pretty cool. I like that. It's a game changer.
Yeah, of course you need to be kind of fluent in impressioning. So
Right.
overfiling is still a problem. But yeah, this
Something
works.
a little bit slightly off topic is just about that I was interested in and that you might know about that I've heard a couple people talk about is impressioning medical keys
Yeah.
with the angled cuts. I'm just curious how that would mark, like how that would show up because
Depth-wise, those are just keys, and on angles, to be sure, I don't know, never tried them. But I know people did it, so I know it's possible. But like I said, I've never tried it.
yeah, just
So I
because
don't know
if
if other
there's a
people have
master,
any comments on that.
just because like if there is a master key system and you can figure out what the angles are, then the angles are going to all stay the same. Then at that point, it's just about figuring out the depths.
Are you saying that on the whole system, all the angles will be the same?
Yeah,
And
on a
that master
master
key,
key medical because it all has to be like the true gates are a certain angle, right, of the key pin.
yeah. But your
So
whole system will have the same angles.
yeah, it would have to. I think, as far as I
Okay.
understand.
If that's the case, you just, I'm saying just, need a blank medico key and start impressioning. And if you have one working key in your system, because, well, you gained access to that through some nefarious manner, you know in which angles you have to file. Because then the
Right.
only thing you need to decode is not the angles, but the depth, and which is normal impressioning. But of course, you have
Right.
to file in the correct angles, otherwise your key won't work. But yeah,
Right.
if you have access to those, to either one lock, so you can figure out what the angles are, or one key, so you can look what the angles are, that should be doable.
The
That's pretty
angles are
cool.
not the same with medical master key systems. Well, with most medical systems,
Oh, okay.
they can
Okay.
be.
No, but is
Well,
it?
of course
How
it
do
can be,
they
but they
separate?
don't have to be. Okay.
Medico master key systems, you have to have the same angles across everything. The Corbin Emhart system did allow varying the angles of the cuts, but Medico does not.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, that's awesome.
Okay. So you have competing options, but yeah, if it's indeed all the same angle, then impressioning, well, I'm not saying should be a breeze, but definitely should be doable.
More realistic.
Yeah, if you know how to impression, I mean, the angles are not that hard. It's just I wouldn't do that in a speed competition because I would probably fuck it up. But if you know what you're doing, I mean, you just file at an angle, and those angles are not. It's not an exact science. I mean, if you're off by a bit, it still works. So yeah, you just have to make sure that that the middle of the valley of your key is indeed at the correct angle. So yeah, you have to work a bit more exact, I presume. So I wouldn't do it if I was in a hurry. Let's put it like that.
And I'll defer to Night Owl because he knows quite a bit more than me. I was under the impression that if you have a fore and aft cut, you can have different angles on a fore cut than you can on or a different angle on a fore cut and a different angle on an aft cut in the same system. Is that not the case, Night Owl?
So there are some tricks you can do with very, very, very large master key systems, like where you're doing something almost similar to sectional master key systems, where with biaxial and the later systems, you can do both fore and aft cuts with slightly different depths and angles on a single master key. But that is a fairly rare thing to encounter.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess you'd need to have like a whole separate key pin almost, or some master pin that has the true gates in there. Is there such a thing?
Currently, Medico does not have anything like that. The key pin always determines the angle that it has to be set to.
That's really interesting. It's how Emhart is able to do it.
Emhart was able to do it because their system, the key pin sort of didn't determine the rotation angle. The way they worked is they did not have a sidebar. They instead had the top pin, the key pin and the driver pin actually
Interlocking, yeah.
This little tongue and groove sort of setup.
Puzzle piece sort of thing.
And so they
Which
then
makes for interesting keys.
yeah, so they then made their master pins. They made them where some of them, the groove on the bottom and the tongue on the top were aligned the same way. And then they had others where the tongue and the groove were at different angles. So with that, it allowed you to vary the angle across your master key system.
That's wild.
Okay. So the groove in your bottom pin is more like that shaped instead of a straight groove. Is that correct?
I mean the groove is sort of a T shape.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So like that instead of straight.
I mean it's straight going side to side, but
Okay.
profile is more of a T shape. It's
Yes, but that's the way it normally is. And how does it work in master in if you can vary angles?
so the Corbin. I actually can pull up some diagrams here.
Yeah, like the Corbin, it interlocks on the top of the pin. So it's not the same as
Yeah,
like the
I know
medical
what
one.
I know what a normal
Oh, okay.
Ermhard looks like. So that's the T shape. But I thought it was. But I'm trying to figure out what that shape would be if it can handle more
Change
angles
the
than one.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that shape stays the same. It's that the master wafer actually has.
Are you showing something?
I am trying to pull up the document that has.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you already were. I did see where it was. So.
I am pulling up the document now
Okay.
and trying to find the correct page there.
Because I have an Ermhard right here, but that's not master key. So for people who don't know, the key looks kind of weird because if you turn this one 180 degrees, then the grooves in those pins still protrude over your shear line. So they have to take bits off the on the back side of your key, otherwise it won't turn. So those are very easy to recognize.
So hopefully everyone can see this.
I can.
But this is
Look good.
Corbin's
Ah!
official documentation for the old.
Okay, now it makes complete sense. It was way easier than I envisioned.
right? Or no, actually it wouldn't have to because it all depends on whatever the master pin has. Like, could the master pin have the same direction?
Yes. So they have three. So down
Oh,
here,
there.
center, bottom, that diagram shows the master pins where
Yeah, that's
you either
cool.
switch to a left angle, you switch to a right angle, or you remain the same.
I found another picture I posted in lockpicking chat if anybody wants to see like the actual master pins.
Yeah, so
That's cool.
there you can actually see the one
It's a nice
all the
picture.
way on the
Yes.
very
Thanks,
good
Najo.
picture.
Never seen that before, but I think, but yeah, nicely
That's-
done. Anyone else? Comments, questions, anecdotes? Let's
Well
hold
done,
off
guys.
jokes. Thank you.
So I had one real quick. If you had to do a quick impressioning, do you have like an average time? Like how long would it take you if you were under the gun or like doing some sort of time trial?
On an Abus, I would probably be around a minute and a half.
That's pretty fast.
Yeah, I did a couple. Yeah,
That's really cool. Awesome, thank you.
but that doesn't mean it's guaranteed, right? I mean,
Right.
I've been in qualifier rounds that took me over 50 minutes. Those don't happen that often, but yeah. Normally, if I do not open an Abus within 2 minutes, I'm either fucking up or having a really bad day. But those are my times. Yeah. With a bit of training, you definitely should get it under 15 minutes or 10 minutes even. As an example, a qualifying round in a impressioning championship is an hour. The first 8 or something that open within that hour get to the other rounds. A second round depends on where you're competing, but a second round could be per round 7 minutes. So the idea is that you do open within those 7 minutes if you're any good. Not everybody opens there, but yeah, but that's pressure of the competition, of course, also that adds on considerably.
Yeah.
But 10-15 minutes should be a decent time if you're trained a bit.
That's awesome. It takes me about a minute and a half to figure out where I left my files. I couldn't even.
These things happen, yeah. But
Thanks.
that normally doesn't count through that time. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
everybody set go, and then yeah, you're not searching for your files then.
What about where are all these competitions normally?
Well, the Netherlands, that's where I'm from. I competed in Seattle a couple of times, Melbourne, Germany, Czech Republic has competitions, and that's about it. And that's the
Okay.
sport fields. I mean, I know that Locksmith every now and then have a friendly match as well, but those are the official competitions that exist in the world. Yeah. And some impressioners you meet at all those places. So yeah, some of us travel a lot. Well, not the past 2 years, of course, but yeah.
Right. I've always wondered if there are more events in Canada.
Not to my knowledge, but we might organize something.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. There isn't a huge scene in Canada, but it's starting to grow.
Okay, cool. Well, actually, I'm working on a book with a couple of other people, and it will be out soonish. Well, actually, in a couple of months. You can already pre-order it, and it is by no starch. So if you order it during this venue, you can have a discount. There is a channel where I believe 25% off, I think. Why am I saying this? Well, publication, of course, and but also one of the later chapters is how to organize a competition. And so that gives you all sorts of tips what to do and what not to do, and that's not just impressioning, but also on the other fields within competitive lockpicking. So yeah, if you want to organize something, that might be a good place to start off.
Yeah, I guess a big part of it too is from the province that I'm in, there's weird regulations that haven't been really defined and that are leave people feeling nervous about getting into lock sport, I think, which is another
It can be, yeah. I mean, I know that in France, even the possession of lockpicks is more than frowned upon. So you do need a very good excuse to have that stuff. Actually, that used to be the case in Germany as well. We're talking quite some years ago. And then the friends of SSDev, which is a spin-off from the Chaos Computer Clubs, they started a locksmith club, and that was SSDev with member cards and everything. So to give a semi-valid reason to be carrying lockpicks. And that's basically what started the competitive lockpick movement. Woo, we have deers.
I guess that would be something that would be really good for Canada to set something up like that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you need to have a critical mass of people, but yeah, if you have a couple of enthusiasts and you do organize a venue where competitions are held, that normally gives a huge draw. I mean, well, now everything happens online, so you do meet some people. And if you have a sports night, well, some people will show up. But if you have an actual venue with talks and competitions and stuff like that, that has a way bigger draw, and people will be easier convinced to travel a bit to get to that venue, I think.
But I don't know if that's when will that time ever come again?
I'm pretty sure at some point we will be able to travel.
Hopefully.
Yeah. We'll have a different crisis then, but we will be able to travel. Anyone else? We have plenty of time.
I feel
Yeah,
I feel duty bound to ask you about impressioning lever locks, as I feel like I'm going to. Well, one of my challenges, perhaps one day, is to impression the Mersey that's sat in front of me.
Okay. I'm not good at lever locks. Is Nigel in the house?
No, he isn't. But I've spoken to him for ages and ages about it. I just thought I'd mention it as a kind of couldn't resist.
Okay, yeah, that's okay. You're free to ask, but I'm free to tell you. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I know a bit of it. I mean, technically, it works the same. So you try to turn it. If it doesn't turn, then one part is preventing it from turning. That will mark. So you take material off at that point, and that goes exactly the same for levers.
yeah.
But of course,
In
there's way
automotive,
much itty-gritty there, but yeah.
in automotive, there's usually between 10 to 12 wafers, either in the door or ignition, and impressioning usually falls along the same lines, but you usually get a line across instead of a dimple.
Of course, because it's a disc that you go through instead of a pin that you push down. And yeah, impressioning wafer locks is normally the marks are very easy to read, and the only thing I find difficult is to use that less force to not kill your lock, because your lock is quite fragile, and especially your wafer lock. Wafer is quite easy to bend, and we tend to use quite a lot of force while impressioning, and well, a normal lock, a pin tumbler lock is not designed for that, but it can handle that quite well. But a wafer lock might die while doing that. At least that's my yeah.
The
That's
other
what
thing you have to remember with the automotive locks is they're a two-sided key. So you're going to get different marks on one side of the key than the other. And I learned this the hard way in a competition, but if you'll put a stroke or a score on one side of your key, then you'll remember to always put the key in the same way every time, because if you flip the key over and insert it, now you're getting the marks in the wrong places. So
Thank you.
rubber
That's
band
very
had to
helpful.
teach-
Yeah, that will. That's,
I'm
well,
like,
in
what,
the
they're not-
end, you should be okay because you keep on doing it on every side. So at some point, it'll form to the correct. But yeah, that's double work.
No,
Yeah.
because they're not the same on both sides.
Okay.
It's not a convenience key. It's not, you can't reverse it.
Okay. This happens.
But
I just shared my screen again. This is the book I was talking about, and we actually have a discount now of 30% apparently. But it's a pre-order. You won't get it yet. It'll take a bit. I mean, it's now estimated on May next year. So, but it does exist in some form and shape.
Could you post that link in the chat, please?
Yeah, I probably am able to do so.
Thank you. I can't read it.
Am I? Hold on a second. How do I do that? Oh, different window. Hold on a second. Computers, hard. Uh, uh, there you go. And it's there.
well,
It will get a different color than cover than that, but so yeah. Any other questions, comments, war stories? We have 11 minutes.
What are the most common mistakes rookie impressioners make?
Using too much force. And well, actually, strike that. Incorrect filing techniques. It's like anything worth training. You should start off trying to do stuff good. And once you get opens and you have opens, you get opens consistently, then I should start looking at how to speed up. Because if you try to work fast, you start getting sloppy. And sloppy filings is your biggest enemy, in my opinion, for impressioning. You need to have as consistent workspace as possible, and your workspace is the top of your key. And so if you file in a neat manner, consistent, that would be that would be your biggest help. So so trying to speed up way too soon in your progress would be the biggest enemies. And go for very cheap files. That would be also a very sure way to ruin your experience. I think that would be the top part.
So I have a question. Actually.
Yeah, sure.
I have this dumb Abus lock, which I have a steel key for, unfortunately. And only a steel key. I can't find brass blanks. Do you have any tips for me for impressioning a lock where the key is harder than the key pins?
Well, I've done that before. It's a hassle, but technically it's still the same. It will mark, but your marks will probably look different. A mark might not look like a point where a pin pushed, but if you look at it, your surface might be more duller or more shinier than the other ones, because you still have that spot where metal meets metal and you're moving it. And at one of those positions, that movement, that pushing happened with more force than on the others. So you're looking at probably vague shadows of marks than an actual mark. So maybe use a bit more force and use longer wiggling movement. So make sure that there's a lot of impact between your pins and your keys, and then really compare all those positions with each other. And one will stand out, and that will look wildly different than if you're using correct keys, but there will be a difference. And as soon as you learn that difference, that is the stuff you need to hunt for while impressioning.
So yes, but I also have another follow-up question to what you just said.
Sure.
The locks that I've been impressioning until now are just like, I would say that they're like the easier locks that I have to impression. But I really struggle with actually the smaller and also cheaper locks, because I think it's because the key pins are duller and and you get a wider area of force, which is also why I don't feel like that ABS lock is marking. So are there any tools besides the magnifying glass you would recommend for seeing marks more easily?
Yes, magnifying glass, well, depends on your eyes, but those are definitely useful. Lights. You want indirect light. So sometimes if you look at the key, you look at it like this, and you see absolutely no marks whatsoever. If you turn that key while looking at it closely, so let the light dance over where the mark should be, at some point you should see something, how could I miss this? So it could be a glittering, or you see that it's a different dulling of your surface or something like that. So don't just look at it in a stationary way. Keep on turning it under your light.
Yeah.
And also, get a decent light. Yeah. And try some different light sources to see what fits you.
Now, sandpaper. When would you recommend the use of sandpaper?
Well, the way I work, that would be never. But every now and then, if you want to smooth off your area, so if you see some marks that you go like, I don't know if this is a mark, and it looks all weird, I don't know what a mark is and what not, you could dull the whole area with sandpaper or sandblaster or whatever, and to basically take almost no material off, but make all the surface uniform, and then you can reintroduce your key to the lock, start wiggling, and see how those new marks appear on your freshly cleaned surface area.
I was actually getting help from Nigel, which you apparently know, with impressioning, and he recommended the Swiss Cut #2 file, which I have 2 of them. Is that the file that you also use, or what file do you use?
No, I use a #4.
Use a #4.
Yeah, but I mean, that doesn't mean that is... the fact that I use it doesn't mean that's the correct file. It just works for me.
Yeah.
And most impressioners that I have contact with, most of them gravitate to the #4.
Okay. I think
doesn't
I
mean you
may
can't
have
do it with it too.
I'm going to check actually. I might actually have a #4. But thank you for answering my questions, and a great presentation. I'll let others ask.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask if you've ever heard of the LockTech, that LockTech impressioning tool.
I know of several tools, but I'm not really sure which one is which.
It's
is that
the one where you
built-in light that slides in?
Yeah. You put your key inside of it, and it has the computer image that you could see, and with the lights and everything.
Okay, most of those tools are geared towards red teams and covert entry teams by very expensive 3-letter agencies and stuff like that. I do see some form of merit for an agent walking up a door has to be surreptitious and in the dark and have nothing on him except that tool. In a speed sports competition setting, those tools are more than useless. It makes stuff complicated. It's more things to do. It's more things to fail. So I would say awesome gear, and they normally look really cool, and I do want them, but I will probably never use them in a competition setting, because in a competition setting, The easiest thing to do is keep it simple and speed up. Because if you need to move things, if I'm working, I'm at a workbench. So I don't need a tiny gizmo with a built-in light source thingy that I slide through. I just take it out and look through a big-ass lens that's right in front of me. So sports and the real world, different. It's completely different. So I do see that there might be some merit in some of these tools, because, well, there's a reason people, those guys keep on selling and buying that stuff. But in a sports setting, I would definitely spend my money otherwise.
All right.
For locksmithing also, we have a different,
Okay, well, thank you very much.
different environment.
Cool. Yeah, locksmithing also is a different beast than sports or covert entry, of course. That's. I mean, we all do the same, but we do it differently.
Yeah, a requirement.
I believe I have 2 minutes left. Quick question, anyone? Okay, more beer for me.
I was just going to ask quick. Once you get the basics down, what are some of your suggestions for getting quicker opening times?
Well, first, of course, buy my book, because there's a lot of it. Well, I had to answer that. Come on, it's well, basically, it's practice over and over and over and over and over again. It's well, like I said, first get consistent openings, and I don't care if they last an hour. Get it consistent, because an open is the first count, and if you're very fast at making bump keys, that's not what the sports all is. So make sure you have consistent openings, and then figure out where you're good. Then look at every step of your process and figure out where to speed up things there. So don't look at the whole area. Change one thing at a time and figure out if that speeds you up. And if it does, keep that. And if it doesn't, go back to what you were doing and try something else. So it's a lot of rinse and repeat and trial and error.
Most of the time is spent finding your mark. So if you can learn to find your marks faster, then that will make you faster.
Yeah, so experience goes a really long way. If you've seen a ton of marks, it's way easier to recognize marks. If you work more consistently, so neater and correctler, it's way easier to actually see your marks, and you know where to find them in the middle of the craters you just created. That's where they should be. So then hunting for marks becomes way easier. So if you're struggling with your filing technique, that's the first thing I would work on. That will probably halve your opening times.
How should you
Just
file
after-
actually?
just-
And how do you reduce chatter on the file?
Chatter?
You know when your file goes like
That. That is changeable by pushing either harder or less hard on your file.
So I actually
Because what it does, it skids. And if you push harder on it, it'll skid in a different manner. What I normally do if I'm in practice mode, because I'm a month before a decent competition, I put my folding workbench dead smack in the middle of the living room, and I file there. So if I make a lot of noise, I will be told not to. What we can do, what I tend to do, is I have a rubber mat, just a regular rubber mat. And if you push your key with some force on that rubber mat and then have your file do that, that'll take away quite some decibels from the squeaking noise.
So that's actually what I've been doing, but it does remove the squeaking, but you won't actually get a fine surface sometimes. I have mainly problems with this when I'm doing steel keys, unfortunately.
Steels will make a different beast, yeah. Sorry, got tested, so.
Okay, so I'm going to recommend, and we're going to let Gravity Karma come on and tell us about the NATO Mersey lock. which is a lever lock, which we learned about yesterday, designed for safes. And I think he's here. Yep, there he is. Are you ready to go?
Ollie, does that mean